when everyone else around could only see the worst in me. Oh Lord, He saw the best in me. She did. When everyone else around could only see the worst in me. I've had witnesses slave today. Oh Lord, see, He is mine and I am His, and it doesn't matter what I did. See, He only sees me for who I am. See, He is mine and I am His, and it doesn't matter what I did. He only sees me for who I am. He saw the best, the best, the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. Oh Lord, He saw the best in me. Yes, He did. When everyone else around me could only see the worst in me.
Hello, this is Christina Laster, and you are joining me for Managing Day to Day with Christina Laster, National Parents Union. And I just want to declare a banner of faith, hope, and love over your lives. I love you guys all. I am thinking about you. And hi, America's children, we love you. And so I'm here today again, working on increasing the learning curve while we allow the government to work on flattening the COVID curve. I hope you're all well, and we're ready to get this week started with joy and gladness. And I am just so happy to be here with my special guest, Dr. Derek King, and he will explain exactly who he is and what he does. Hi, Dr. King.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
I'm great. I am great. I'm just enjoying the sunshine here in California, and the air in my lungs, How about that?
Absolutely. Well, I want to start out by saying, well, God bless you for the way that this show actually started, because what you don't know is I love Christ and I know He loves me. So hallelujah.
Amen.
For the way that actually started. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it's been on my heart to just let people know that, He sees the best in you. It don't matter what no one else says. It doesn't matter how, even sometimes we think about ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And in our children, He sees the absolute best. And we're here to help them be everything that He created them to be. And so you could tell our guests who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Dr. Derek King, as you mentioned. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services for Excelsior Charter Schools. We operate 7, soon to be 8 campuses within Southern California. And we are 7th through 12th grade education.
That's amazing, And so, how has COVID affected what it is that you guys do at Excelsior?
Well, Excelsior as an organization has been around 25 years. So we're a hybrid program. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, we're 7th through 12th grade. So in our hybrid program, we have a balance of distance learning, seat time learning, as well as concurrent and dual enrollment. So we were actually perfectly prepared for this because all of our students have some capacity of distance learning already. So what we were able to do pretty seamlessly was just shift to allow 100% of our students to be on distance learning and actually keep all the services, everything available to our students in a really in a seamless manner. So they still have their classroom attendance via Zoom workshops. Our parents are still having coffees with the principal. We're still having site meetings. We're still having leadership meetings, on a weekly and daily basis. Our students are still getting together for social things. We're still doing IEPs. We're still enrolling. We're still doing a lot of things.
And so you guys were already operating this way, to some degree. And so it allowed you to just continue to function. The kids are still able to access their education in a meaningful, adequate way, and just keep that ball rolling. And I am so glad for schools that exist like yours. What is it that you guys actually specialize in?
So we actually specialize in the entire gambit. So what we always try to explain is, in some cases, we're going to celebrate that kid because we stopped them from dropping out. In other cases, we're going to celebrate that kid that we were able to encourage onto an Ivy League school, but everything in the middle. So we offer a lot of college courses. We also offer a lot of trade certifications as part of the students' overall master schedule. We really do offer everything. So, as just we are a public charter, so everything is free to include when they're taking the college courses with us. Because of the laws within the state, the families are actually paying $1 per unit. We're actually either supplying the book and or refunding the book if we don't have the book already. But if there's an issue of equity or cost, then we go ahead and just foot that bill. So all of our students do have devices. In this environment, one of the things I would add is we took a lot of steps, and I do want to say a public thank you to both Charter and Comcast for reaching out to allow our families that did not have internet access the ability to have it. We had already stepped in to fill that gap organizationally, but knowing that they were there allowed us another avenue to be able to support our families.
Yes, that's amazing, right? And so, that I say thank you as well, so that people are able to access their children's education. And right now across the nation, we see an issue with students being able to access their education. They don't have the technology, they don't have that Chromebook, and so your students were already set up for that. What about your enrollment? Are you finding that right now people are looking to enroll?
Yeah, our enrollment is actually experiencing a surge during this time. So it's actually higher than it normally is. And part of that is because the message is getting out that we have been pretty seamless as it relates to supporting our families. Plus, we're also trying our best to advocate or encourage parents to have agency, to be able to advocate on behalf of their child, to do things like this, right? To participate in these types of forums, to say, okay, if I'm not a part of your organization, what do I do? But just as important as what do I do today while we're in this quarantine environment, this information is also useful for what do I do going forward, whether my child is a student with disability, general education student, a student that just needs some encouragement, a student that could be transitioning from anything, whether that's transitioning from being system involved, to traditional education, or coming out of an expulsion, or just transitioning from another school. It's our responsibility as parents, first and foremost, even though the California Department of Education puts educators in loco parentis, right, in place of the parent. But we understand that our parents have the utmost love for their kids, and our job is to help parents advocate for their kids and partner with those parents to be able to provide the best possible education we can for every child.
And that's amazing, because I always talk about how all children really should have an individualized education plan, because we need to be supporting our children's modalities of learning. Yes. I have 4 children and 2 grandchildren, and none of them think exactly the same, and none of them operate exactly the same. And so it sounds like you guys have already been doing that, and I applaud you and thank you. And I'm so glad that you still have enrollment and ability for people to access your, educational platform, because that's important, right? And we don't want our children to lose. But us as parents, we have to be able to take an evaluation of what we've already had given to us and what's out there. And so
Yes.
I'm always willing and here to bring the choices and options that bring hope, right? And
Yes.
that's why I have you on today. And so thank you. And, talking about advocacy, right? Parent advocacy. I found as a parent advocate and a civil rights activist, even that having organizations, community, right, to support you
Yes.
in that actually helps magnify the impact of that, right? So
Yes.
I saw that you were a part of several organizations, and you can talk about that, but
Sure.
how does that help? How do those organizations, those community organizations, embracing parents, how can that help to increase the impact of the educational advocacy?
So in several different ways, but in short, there's always strength in numbers, right? But additionally,
Mm-hmm.
because navigating the educational system is very complex, not everyone gets it. So if you think about it like this, for educators, for the most part, we were very successful within the system of education. That's why we stayed in it, right? Think about it. You go from kindergarten to 12th grade. Most of us were pretty good at school, right? Most educators were pretty good at school. But understanding that not every parent knows how to navigate that process for their child. Meaning, to your point, if their child needs a specific type of help, do they know how to get it? Maybe, maybe not. But what happens
Yeah.
with advocacy groups is now that answer is readily available because now you have the social capital, meaning the pairing of people to come together to say, hey, I've experienced this before. Here's what I did. Have you considered making sure you're attending every parent board meeting? Have you made sure or have you considered making sure that you're going to those LCAP meetings to where that way your voice is being heard in terms of how those districts or those schools are spending that money, because those things cannot be missed. For example, like you just mentioned, we were talking about devices, right? But that was because we spent some of those resources years ago to make sure that we were going to be able to be equitable across the board, because we knew not every kid was going to have an iPad or a Chromebook at home. So what do? You make sure as an educational entity, if that's going to be part of your platform, you don't leave it up to the household, because that's where disparities will exist. Because largely, sometimes what we miss is we just think of disparities as it relates to income. But the reality is there are disparities that are related to resources. Those resources are
Right.
people sometimes they are monetary, sometimes they're access. Right. But there's those disparities in resources are where advocacy groups can really come together to kind of give people some direction in terms of here's how you get this issue resolved.
Right. And, it embraces the parents in such a way that they're not out there fighting alone. Right. And so I found that, actually reaching out to local community organizations was the best way to have the external support for parents that they needed, to bring in that wealth of knowledge and wisdom of here's what we've done, and it may work and may not. And if it doesn't, we're going to still help you fight for what's right for your child.
Right.
And I really appreciate the value in saying that equity is not just about one thing, right? It does include resources and the haves and have-nots.
Right.
And so, having some people just embrace you as a parent is vital, and don't discount anyone, because I will tell you that I've went all over talking to community organizations, and the ones that I thought were the least likely to say, hey, wait, we care about that.
Right. Another resource when you're talking about advocacy groups or parent groups is also the ability to communicate. Right now, I personally heard you communicate and advocate on behalf of kids. Right now, you can have a parent who has the same heart, but they don't have that skill set. Now, being part of an organization allows you to advocate on their behalf. It allows them to support you in whatever way they can. And then you're offering your ability, in this case, to advocate on behalf of their child, because they may just not have the words. And so again, that's an issue of equity also, right? Sometimes we imagine this. If I were to give it context, people go to jail and stay out of jail based on the person advocating for them, the ability of their lawyer, right? A lot of times, right? So then when you start to think about resource issues, now those lawyers who are able to better communicate are oftentimes better able to advocate on behalf of their client. The same is true for parent advocacy groups within the school setting.
And so, I have to say that the place where I see the biggest fight is over special education, right? I mean, it's just a hands down, this huge battle. And even if you feel like you're making a little bit of progress, you come back the next year and the fight is all over, starting again.
Yes.
And so how do you feel about that area, and what have you done to support your students?
Sure. Special education always needs increased consideration, right? Because when we're talking about equity, sometimes what happens is when people are having a conversation about equity, they think about doing the same things for all kids. Well, that's not equitable because not all kids have the same needs, right? So now if we're talking about special education, right? Students with disabilities, whether those are, whatever type of cognitive or social emotional disability they may have, they have an increased and or amplified need. Now, like we were just talking about, sometimes it works out great to partner with an advocate to be able to speak on their behalf, but it's also imperative on every family to become as expert and really dig in to where that way they're never releasing their agency, meaning their ability to improve their position on their own also, meaning get in there and understand that behavioral plan. Be involved in that conversation to say, based on my observation of my child, I see that these things have been successful in the past, right? But these things haven't worked in the past. Get in there and have those conversations, have those discussions to get those appropriate sets of services that you think will benefit your child. And I will also say this, make sure that you're being honest about the type of support that you're giving your child at home, and you're not just pushing that all on the school setting, meaning it's up to me as a parent to make sure my child is ready to go to school to learn, right? Largely, but it's also up to the school to take that handoff appropriately. Now, what I can't do, and what happens sometimes, and this is not just special education, this is just period. What happens sometimes is, and we're seeing this now. So one of the beauties of this quarantine, I would say, and I kind of say this in jest, but it's a beautiful thing, and that is educators are going to be a lot more appreciated, right? Because a lot of the things that, as it relates to engagement or just getting a child to focus for a little while, those are developed skill sets, right? So right now, one of the things I encourage parents to do while they're at home is, encourage that child to be focused in spurts. And then how do I, work on those different things to get my mind to relax a little bit and then get back into it. So think about it. As we are adults, we learn how to do that. We learn how to focus. We learn when our mind drifts, and we learn how to go back to it. A child has to also develop those skill sets, because here's the other reality, whether it's special education or general education, at some point that child is going to transition into adulthood. So it is our job as educators and as parents to make sure that we have equipped that child to best understand how they learn best, because they can still be doctors, lawyers, engineers, no matter what, even if they're a student with disability. And so we should never limit them as it relates to that.
And I like the setting the expectation, right? And what is our expectation of our own children? One thing that I find with parents that have to educate right now more than one child is not making comparisons. Comparisons are so unhealthy. And what happens is that the kids pick up on it. I will tell you that kids have a strong sense of justice and fairness, okay? And you can see equity just in their conversation. Well, she got juice and I didn't. He got a couple cookies and I only got one cookie, right? And so they understand that. But catering to their learning style looks a lot different. So I'm not going to have my, 8-year-old at the level of my 13-year-old.
No.
And I'm not going to get mad if he's not doing straight hour of work because he
Right.
cannot.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so I chunk the time, and I want
Yes.
parents to understand what this looks like.
Yes. Yes.
My expectation from my 8-year-old looks like you are going to do 10 to 15 minutes of work, and then you get a preferred activity, and we'll come back and do more work, right?
Yes. Yes.
Or you get a break to get
Yes.
your wiggles out,
Yes.
whatever,
Yes.
and then we'll come back.
Yes.
And then when my 13-year-old, you are going to do 25 to 35 minutes of work, okay? And then you're going to get a break,
Yes.
a preferred activity, or another, just a switch of activities.
Sure. Yes.
And then you'll come back.
Yes.
And I don't say, hey, you know, he did 15 minutes, you did 30. No, it's what is supporting that child. And chunking time is very important. Setting expectations. It is equity because you're giving each child what he or she needs to thrive. So please elaborate on that.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add to that in this sense. One of the things that's very valuable and it always yields results, and that is celebrating a child. Finding that child's unique strengths, those unique academic strengths too. So sometimes we have to help a child see that. And I'll relate it this way. If you have a child that has a long history of underperformance academically, sometimes they forgot what it was like to be celebrated academically. Because there are strengths there. I promise you, with every child, there are strengths there. Sometimes we have to help them identify that and remember what that felt like. Right. So then that way they'll understand now this particular area may not be my unique strength, as you're like what you're saying, but this area is. So now how do I understanding how I learn best? Because remember, we're going to transition to adulthood, all of us at some point. Right. So based on the way that I learn, how do I leverage that? But helping to identify that early on is going to be a benefit. And now if you take a student with an IEP, that's incredibly important to center those conversations around that, making sure that that part of that IEP, especially the beginning of it, is starting out celebrating that child's strengths and some of those improvements. Sometimes that improvement is from, you know, a D to a C minus, but hallelujah. Right? Because that's improvement, right? That's improvement. And so if you show a child that I'm moving, or I've had this conversation with several educators, whether it was as a principal or as a teacher or whatever, whatnot, but sometimes you have to celebrate going from a 30% to a 49%. Because if you just leave it as the number grade, the kid will, well, I still got an F and I tried harder. You moved up 13, 14%. High five.
Right.
You see what I mean? And let's keep moving. Now we're going to move again, and we're going to move again, and we're going to move again. And that's our job. Our job is to be able to celebrate a kid, be able to engage that kid, help that kid and that family to identify what those kids' specific strengths are, also what that kid's needs are. So that way we can fill in those gaps too. Because again, when we're talking about equity, sometimes equity is based on access, but sometimes that access is just how we're centering those conversations, right?
Yes. And so, you know, even parents, I want you to think about, you know, not looking at what everyone else is posting as their schedule, what they're doing, right? But just seeing what areas that you can, you know, in strengths and weaknesses, whatever they may be, that are going on in your household, right? Because we can get caught up and watching like someone's calendar. Oh, look at all these things I did with my kid today. And then you start making a comparison among yourselves and saying, oh, wow, I must not be doing that well. No, I use this example that if my child wasn't able to write in a straight line with the right size letters, appropriate letter sizing before and is now, hey, we're progressing.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
And that token economy is huge, right? With certain children. Offering that immediate praise, offering that immediate celebration of progress and what does progress look like in your home, right? And we don't want to forget that we also can offer our children an opportunity to learn a skill set, right? Like, you know, at their level. I'm not going to have my son go outside at 8 and say, change the tire. Let's work on this through a YouTube video.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yes, 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 yes,
No, we're not
yes,
doing that.
yes,
But
yes,
what can he do, right? What
yes,
can, a 13-year-old or a high school student do? Let's have them do some skills training and
yes,
perfect and master that one thing. And so talk
yes.
about that.
Well, and I'll relate it to sometimes it's helpful to help a child understand a relatable skill. And I'll express it this way. A lot of times we're aware of kids who are oriented toward video games, right? That means they have the skill set to focus, right? Because they can focus for hours, right, on that particular thing. Now, if you help that child understand, they'd be like, well, my mind just drifts in. Okay, well, help me understand. What are you doing differently when you're playing a video game that your mind is staying on it?
Right.
You're very, very good at that. Now, helping them to translate that particular skill that now you've helped them to identify. No, you have it. It's there because I watched you play the video game the other day for 3 straight hours. You didn't take a break,
Yes.
right? You didn't take a break
Right.
at all. And find out from them and do a good job of listening. Well, how were you able to do that? Right? And then, well, and they'll share with you. Well, because they might say, well, because I like it, or whatever reason, I was rested up, or whatever it is. Okay, so now let's take some of those things that you're able to demonstrate in this environment and shift some of those things over to this other environment because they're transferable skills. And sometimes a child just needs to be redirected toward that to understand you have it within you.
And so that's a process of developing, like we said. I mean, even us as adults are still developing around some areas. We don't know it all, right?
No,
and so
no.
I could be the first to say
Yeah.
that. And so I won't say that about you, Dr. King, but I'll say that about me.
No,
right?
me too. Me too.
Right.
As you learn more, you realize what you don't know. And sometimes kids need to hear that. Kids need to hear that. Like, there's a ton of things I don't know, right? Here's the part I'm good at. Yes, right. So here's the part I'm good at. So I leverage my time toward that to amplify that particular thing, and I work on the other things that I still have the gaps in.
Exactly. And so how can we motivate, and I appreciate that information because, using that transference of information and skill, right, is vital for ADHD kids.
Yes.
That, and autistic kids, because we can watch them in some areas. It seems like they're not focused or they're not paying attention, but it's really the opposite. They're paying attention to everything. And so finding out how they're able to focus in on one thing and be successful at that is huge. It's huge. And so thank you for triangulating that in. But, at the same time, I would like to find out how people can effectively manage through some behaviors that may come up, right? Mm-hmm. Like while you're developing your child around a certain task or a certain skill or gaining access to this information that they didn't have before or they didn't kind of, fine tune before, how do you effectively manage and navigate through some behaviors that may come up?
I would suggest first and foremost, be patient. I would also relate it to yourself. And I'll use myself as an example. If any child is watching this, if I'm tired, my ability to focus is different. My ability to actually tolerate silly things is also different too. I may have a shorter fuse, right? So now what could I do if I hadn't slept in a long period of time and I'm hungry, because I get hangry also, right? I'm a hangry person, right? So what could I do in those times to help me focus? So what I would encourage, again, going back to it, is 1, be patient. 2, figure out what worked previously. And 3, and I could put 3 interchangeably with 1 or 2, and that would be definitely to talk to the child to say, all right, let's develop a plan together, right? To get these particular things, and that way we can get some agreement. And again, be patient in the sense that you might anticipate that, okay, my goal was to have a 30-minute session, but we were only successful, at getting 13 minutes in. Well, hallelujah. That's a good 13 minutes. Now, next time we're going to try to, increase and increase. But again, with the buy-in of the child, get them to help you develop that plan. Sit down with them. And again, it's make sure it's age appropriate. If you're asking an 8-year-old, make sure you're expecting an 8-year-old's answer, right? And deal with it from that perspective. But whatever it is that you see, relax, be able to, go back to it. Think of it just like an educator. I can't just go off on a child if they don't do what I expect them to do. Here's the analogy. Teachers all the time, they get excited about lessons and they spend all this time putting them together, right? So now let's imagine you go into class that day, and this is just it could be the day before Christmas break, the day before spring break. Kids don't really want to hear it then. They're, overly excited or whatnot. You can't just go off on those kids or whatever. You have to be skilled and put different things in your toolbox to help you be able to get through that lesson. The same is true as a parent. I then have to relax I have 4 kids, right? I have 4 kids, 3 who like school a lot and 1 who never did, right? So here was but you're able to get good results out of all of them. So here's what I explain, and I'll give you the analogy. I'll share the analogy with everyone that I share with my own kids, right? And I said, okay, one of my sons, I said, okay, tell me 3 things about you, right? But I don't just need 3 good things. I need 3 things that are relating to who you are as a, person, right? So here's what came out. I'm smart, hardworking, but sometimes I can be lazy, right? Mm-hmm. And I said to them, that's okay, as long as you put them in the right order. Because if you put lazy in front of smart and hardworking, you get a bad result. But if you can put lazy behind the 2, and you're going to be fine. You can be lazy in some beautiful places then. Does that make sense? So you just have to earn your right. Yes. So when kids want to be focused on certain things, like one of my sons really loves video games. So in his case, what I say to him, you play video games as long as you want, as long as other things in front. Does that make sense? So, yes. And it's a partnership. It's just those conversations. Now, what do I owe him as a parent? What I owe him as a parent is follow through. Right? I have to make sure that if he tells me I put my schoolwork in front of the video games, I need to inspect that. I need to become predictable to where that way he understands, hey, I'm going to check it, and then I'm going to celebrate him. Good job, man. You did it. You got it all done. That's what I'm talking about right there. And go on and play those video games. As a matter of fact, I'll play one with you.
Right. And so that's, thank you for that advice, just having the expectation, having those relevant heart-to-heart conversations to find out where our kiddos are, helping them to become developed around mastering a skill and educating them more, is what we do, and bringing that access to hope and opportunity, of course. And so, I appreciate you. I saw that you had served in the military, and I thank you for your service. I saw your community organizations, and I thank you for serving in the community, because people do not understand that community is where is ground zero, the trenches. We're working to build up our communities, to build up the people within those communities. And this is one way that we do that, so everyone is thriving. People are not just left behind, right? And so thank you for adding that hope. Now, Excelsior is still enrolling.
Yes.
And so can you talk about how people can reach out to you? And then if you have one final thought that you would like to say.
Absolutely. Reaching out to Excelsior is easy. You just go to our website, excelsior.com. It's at the end of my email address. My email is derekk@excelsior.com. If you have any questions, please go ahead and reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer them, whether it's about these topics or any student or parent advocacy related topic. And my closing thought would be this. It's kind of thematically what you've been talking about overall, and kind of is directly in line with the National Parents Union's mission. And that is, one of the strongest resources that we do have is community, right? So align yourself and partner yourself with agencies that are trying to do the work that you need to have done. Because again, sometimes they're already going to have the background to be able to go where you're about to go. Other times they're going to have access to those resources. So you don't really need to reinvent the wheel. They've already done it a lot of times. But other times they just simply need your support, because there's strength in numbers, and organizations also need money. So that would be my closing thought. Partner with an organization and you'll be better off.
I agree. And our impact can just be magnified, and so that I always have a saying, if it ain't trickling down to the kids, it's not working, right? And
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
that's what just the
Absolutely.
best way I can say, sum it
Absolutely.
up. And so thank you for your time, Dr. King. We
You're welcome.
appreciate you and value your wisdom. Again, everyone, we love you. Hello to America's children. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Here to just work on increasing the learning curve as we allow the government to work on the COVID curve. I will see you with Managing Day to Day with Christina Laster and National Parents Union again, same time tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.